Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. How popular is the idea of Ruga settlements among young people in the northern parts of Nigeria? Does the policy truly represent the genuine wishes and aspirations of a set of people among whom President Muhammad Buhari has, over time, enjoyed massive followership? By insisting on going ahead with the planned establishment of Fulani cattle grazing communities across Nigeria, is the president about to close another deal with the youth of the North? Are they generally affected by the policies of the Buhari administration? For a closer look at these posers, we are now being joined from our Abuja studio by Ahmed Buhari, a former presidential aspirant, in fact, one of the youngest aspirants during the 2019 general election in Nigeria. Ahmed Buhari, you're welcome to the morning show.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. You're welcome. Well, you have a very famous surname. Let me start with that. Are you in any way related to President Buhari?
So I think if you can hear me, I think what you've said, for example, from the opening statement about President Muhammad Buhari's plan to go ahead with the Fulani grazing settlement, I think it's rather not an encompassing situation with regards to the grazing plan, with regards to the Ruga plan. You see, I don't think Ruga is the problem. I also do not think that Fulani is a problem. What I do think is a problem is how Nigerians view most of these things. I'll give you a good example, a very quick example with how we had a militancy problem ravaging the country until President Umaru Yar'Adua a few years ago decided to come up with the amnesty program. And to be honest with you, if that amnesty program was supposed to be brought in by, say, a South man, I assure you a lot of people from the North would have said, why are you going to give money to supposed criminals and decide that that's the best way to quell the problem? But because it was coming from a Northern man, we didn't get too many problems or rejections from the North. So again, we have decided to build a country where we all have our mindset fixated and driven by the fact that whoever is the messenger, depending on which side of the divide he comes from, we are prepared to reject it. You see, the idea of ranching has always been a discussion around the Nigerian space. I mean, there's an Obudu cattle ranch. There's a lot of people that have talked about this for many years. And the problem is with this country is when we know that these problems will eventually come setting at us, we still waste time before we allow the implementation of these things happen. So again, very clearly, you can see that we have come to a time where there is no way. In the last 10 years, we've been talking about everybody goes back to agriculture, go back to agriculture. Now, these pathways that this cattle will naturally follow are now pathways that everybody has decided to invest in agriculture. And so naturally, when this cattle come from wherever they're coming across the West African region, which, by the way, there's a West African treaty that allows the free movement of this cattle across the region for the purpose of food and markets, are now areas where you now find farmlands. So by all means, we are definitely going to have a clash. The best way to go about this is to educate the people that are into this business mostly, which happen to be the Fulani people. And by the way, most of the cattle you see them move around with are not necessarily theirs. They're investment from people like you and I who think this is a venture that can actually bring us one thing or the other. So again, what is most important here for all of us at this very crucial time is to say, okay, fine. If this is what the government is planning, how best can we manage it so that it can create economic viability? What I see here is money. What I see is how we can leverage on how states who are complaining about their inability to meet up with their internally generated revenue to say, okay, fine, come set up here. We're going to put some security here. We're going to ensure that we get some people in our community that will bring you the feeds for this cattle. We're going to ensure that we set up a dairy farm next to this ranch or this grazing field. We're going to ensure that we get the skin from the backs of this cow what we send to area market in Aba and make sure that our people there are getting leather at the cheapest possible rate to maximize their profit. We're going to start thinking of how we can collect the feces all together so that we can transform it to ammonia gas and generate power or energy. This is how I want us to think. But again, I keep mentioning one thing. We've allowed, fear to be the domineering factor when it comes to the Nigerian situation, especially when the message is coming from a messenger that does not come from our own enclave. Hate is not the first enemy of love.
Ahmed, can you hear me now?
It destroys our ability to trust.
Ahmed, can you hear me now?
I can hear you still.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
One, you know, with due respect, I do not think that the matter is as simple as you have tried to put it. There are social cultural groups, the Ohanese Indigo, the Afenifere, and other groups, the Southern and Middle Belt Forum, and even Voices of Reason, like President Obasanjo, like Professor Wole Soyinka, Chief Ayo Adebanjo, and so many others, who have said that, look, this idea of cattle colonies across Nigeria is something that could lead to civil war. To use Professor Soyinka's word, something that can, you know, set Nigeria on fire. Do you dismiss all of that as just hate speech or people just playing up sentiments?
If you hear me very clearly, I never said anything about hate speech.
Well,
What I said very clearly is our need to ensure that we control our thought processes to positivity over negativity. In the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've been having clashes that have been killing people, raising communities. And then we're saying, what can we possibly do to resolve these problems? And you mentioned a few people, which by all means have their right to have their concern about these things. But these are matters that have been discussed in the FEC meetings continuously for months. Now, if my governor or my representatives or a minister from my region is unable to communicate this properly with me, then there's a problem, which is why the people should know where to channel their grievances when things like this come up. Again, the government has clearly said we're going to start with certain regions. Let's have a pilot phase. Let's see how we can manage this before we can expand it. There are some other governors that have outrightly rejected it, and nobody is going to compel anybody to do this. And not to forget, some of the states that have actually outrightly rejected, I'm hoping and I'm sure that they have enough in their reserve to take care of their projects and ensure that they take care of the people and the lives of the property of the people in their confines. But again, let's not forget one thing. Everybody has got an opinion. And most of the people that you just mentioned, in all honesty, are people not in a generation that truly are looking for a country that is going to be peaceful for them, that is going to be accommodating for them, that is going to be prosperous for them. Because look, nobody is forcing anybody to have this system. But anywhere you go in the world, you will find where there are grazing settlements that have been created by that country's government. And people keep saying they are coming to take our lands. And I've been saying it clearly. I say the state government is in control of the lands that exist within their jurisdiction. Now, if the state governors can say, fine, I don't want this to happen, then it's fine.
Ahmed, why are you...
Okay, let's have this region.
Ahmed, why are you putting the onus on public sensitization on the state governors when Ruga settlement is not their initiative? Surely the onus should be placed on the initiator of whatever policy it is, which is the federal government. It is the federal government's handling of the rollout of this Ruga settlement that has created all of this dust, which you are dismissing as fear-mongering, but it's actually not. Those fears are not unfounded. There have been violent, bloody clashes between farmers and herders, and people are within their rights to not want imposition. They are within their rights to state that quite loudly. Look at your state, where you come from. Dr. Abati was asking you earlier, but we had sound problems, whether you're related to President Muhammadu Buhari. I'm aware that you're not. You're from Kontagora, Niger State, and your hometown is the home of one of the pilot schemes. Your government has said that the North can accommodate the whole Ruga program. Why then are there plans to take it down south when we need to be sensitive in today's Nigeria?
Thank you very much. But one thing that is most important here is to ask ourselves that fundamental question. Why do these cattle even go to the south in the first place? Two things. One, food. The second thing is a market. Now, the reason also is because the variation in the seasons compels these herders to look for grazing fields that the cattle can access. So, in all honesty, there is bound to be fear and worry because of what has happened in the last few years. But to be fair to the situation, the pilot phase that has started in my state has not received any sort of rejection or fear or worry about, oh, these guys are going to come and take over us or colonize us. Who's going to colonize who? It is a shame when I see elder statespeople talk about things like that. Who's going to colonize who? This country was never a Christian country, neither was it a Muslim country. We have allowed people to Islamize us and to Christianize us. That is the truth of the matter. What we should be focused on right now is what we must do within our space to ensure that we are, first of all, economically free, secure, and think in directions that will put us to prosperity. But all of this talk about, oh, this is going to happen, this is going to, why haven't you had anybody from the other states that have been going to be starting the pilot phase say, oh, no, we don't want this to happen? Because, again, the message is being thought about coming from President Muhammad Buhari, who is from the north, who is from Katsina, who people believe is Fulani. And for that, every other person on the other side of the divide should reject it. I give you an example from the beginning. If the amnesty program was being orchestrated fundamentally from the beginning by a South Southerner, I bet you a lot of rejection would have come from the North. This is just who we are, and that is the problem we need to solve.
Okay, Ahmed, we are going to have to take a short break in a second, but I'll put a question out to you to think about while we take that break. Do you think we're managing our diversity in the best way possible? And what about other commercial settlements that the federal government could also be looking into? Lagos State is an example. We have 1,000 people moving into Lagos City every single day. Is anything being done at federal level to look at a problem like that and look at commercial settlements for an issue like this? Or can we say that it's quite partial based on what we're seeing? But I'll leave that with you. We'll go on a quick break, and as soon as we're back, the conversation will continue. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Still with us is former presidential candidate Ahmed Buhari, and we're speaking about the Ruga settlements up north and around Nigeria, to be honest, and his take on the Ruga settlements and what he thinks the youth's representation is on this. Ahmed, thank you so much for staying with us. Before we went on a break, I posed a question to you with regards to managing diversity in the country and whether this is the most viable and sustainable solution if we're looking at this wholesomely. Because if we're talking about commercial settlements for economic growth, there are several commercial settlements that the federal government should or could be looking into at federal level that we don't seem to be hearing so much noise about. I gave an example, which is one of many, of situations in states like Lagos, our most commercial city, where 1,000 people or over are moving into the city every day. Yes, at federal level, what is being done to actually look into the commercial settlement going on in a city like this? It seems as though everything is quite partial when it comes to this discussion on the herdsmen, or do you beg to differ?
I beg to differ. I'm sorry if I don't totally agree with you. We do have a problem with distribution of commercial hubs. And the herdsman situation is only coming to the front burner because in recent times it has become a threat to our sustenance, especially when it comes to the food that we get from the farmlands. Not to also forget that the consumption of milk, of beef, of the skin, of a lot of products that come from this kind of agriculture is also very essential, which is why we are saying that it's not like anybody's trying to be partial about anything, but there are lots of other commercial activities that are going on in the South, for example, where we will send the federal government invest heavily to ensure that we generate revenue from crude. Not to also forget that the federal government has been seen ensuring that it gets fertilizers for farmers across board, not necessarily from any region, to see that they give them support like grants, like farm implements, like things that would ensure that that farm exercise goes successfully. So why this is at the front burner now is because of the clashes that we've been having that is shaking parts of this country. And what we really think can help resolve some of these problems is to see how we can take off all of this cattle from the roads, from the streets. I keep giving an example with my late father. My father died in 1993, and the reason for his death was because he was driving on the highway and a group of cattle, a cattle herder allowed his cattle onto the road. He swerved, he died. Now, this is the problem. I'm concerned about that as well. It's not just about the clashes between the farmers and the herders. We're also talking about social disturbances that we see from this cattle. Some people see them at their backyards. Some people don't want to see them at all. What we've seen in civilized countries that we like to copy is to see where they've allocated some portion of lands and say, this is where you will stay and do your thing. What we need to understand here is, as long as these people are being educated, which is why the last time I was here, we talked about the Fulani radio. This is how best you can communicate with these people that are not in schools, that do not watch our TVs, but they listen to their radios. We need to talk to them there and say, this is what we're planning to do. Do not fear yourself, because as much as there's some tension from one side, the Fulanis are also thinking, oh, we're going to be settled. This is not what we're used to. For the last 1,000 years, we've been herders. What is going to become of us now that we've been asked to be confined to certain spaces? We should also be asking ourselves, what can we generate or what can we benefit? I'm an IT consultant. If I find that if I grow grass or if I prepare cattle feed and supply to a ranch somewhere, I'm going to make money for myself, by all means, I'm going to be wanting to do that. For me, I see a lot of job creation, I see a lot of revenue generation, and of course I see fear. There is no doubt, which is why we need to talk some more. And I think, was it Ruben Abati on the other side who said I was saying that some of the elders were propagating hate speech? No, not at all. I'm just believing that they're airing their honest views, and I'm saying that we need to talk some more. And when I did talk about the people that attend the FEC meeting, I expect them to also be talking. I said, yes, we were approached about it. We like the idea, or we didn't like the idea, and that is the reason why we're rejecting it or accepting it. These things have got to be tabled step by step. Nigerians must know why they elected the National Assembly members. They must know why they elected their governors, and must work along with the federal system to ensure that we're all carried along. I also will hold this government accountable on the grounds that communication is not properly delivered, which is why some people are left in the dark, or they believe to have some gray areas, why these people are not able to understand what is truly being planned for the country.
Ahmed, thank you very much, but I don't want you to get angry, because on this program sometimes we have people reacting, who are watching. They send us text messages. I just got one response to you now, and I'm reading it from my phone. It says, if this is the mindset of young people from the north, then it's over for Nigeria. It is a hopeless situation. That's one viewer sending, his reaction in. But, it's just for you to take that as feedback. But I would like to ask you, what do you recommend as a way forward? You've talked about public sensitization. You've talked about education. But in very specific terms, in less than a minute, what do you think? How do you think all of this division over cattle settlements can be resolved?
First of all, I am not angry. And first of all, everybody can have a viewpoint. But you see, I've always encouraged us to make sure that we disassociate ourselves from emotions, from sentiments, and stick to superior discussions that can give us the way forward. What I would suggest with regards to this situation is to ensure that we're able to communicate more effectively with the Nigerian people. So because the way we've been wired at all times, we keep finding ourselves falling into the hands of some certain people who would benefit from our division. And that diversity that exists between us, if properly harnessed, can become our, what can put us onto a pedestal for success. I believe that the only way we can have a country that is going to be successful is if we can agree to leverage on our comparative economic advantages while we decentralize our economic hubs, so that no region is left behind, so that everybody is going collectively. And for the person who believes that this is the mindset of the young people, I want him to listen again to what we've been saying. Nobody is supporting anybody. Nobody is standing on any side. We are just trying to move forward and have a country that is going to be good for everybody.
Well, thank you very much, Ahmed Buhari. We've enjoyed this conversation with you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, Tundu, Leila, what do you think? He's so passionate.
He really is, and I appreciate Ahmed's passion, that chutzpah. I really do appreciate it, but I do think he's underplaying the very real fears that are being expressed here, he shouldn't be so dismissive of the fears, because it's not all about economic benefits. How do you reap economic benefits? If you are dead, this is just putting it starkly, that's the bottom line. The Global Terrorist Index identified the Fulani extremists as the 4th deadliest terror organization in the world. This is what we're dealing with here. There have been no well, to the best of my knowledge, who has been put on trial or convicted as a Fulani extremist for the murder of farmers in Benue, Taraba, Plateau State? None of that has happened. So people do feel that there's a sense of partiality, as you said, Leila, that we are not on an evil kill in Nigeria. Even the name Ruga settlements is insensitive.
He was saying, he made one point that, you know, those who are reacting are doing so out of emotions, sentiments, because it is a Fulani president. A president from the north who has done this, you know, and he gave the example of the amnesty program that was done by President Yaradua.
Yes.
And he said if it was a southern president who had done that, then of course maybe in some other parts of Nigeria people will have said, oh, he wants to take care of his people. You think he has a strong point there?
You know, the thing is, I don't think I'm going to dismiss everything that he said, because I do feel that he touched on some very important things, and he did make some strong points. There's a very thin line between ethnic conflict and what the reality really is. And to be very honest here, Tunu, I think you said it all. They erased it as the 4th most deadly terrorist organization in the world. It is a time that is too sensitive for us to start talking about Ruga settlements. And plus, can we also ask a question about educating first and then looking into these solutions as solutions, seeing as we also have the space up north to put people in their ranches over there? I think it's such a back and forth that really and truly, I just hope at this point, state governments stand up for what their people want. I think that's the only way.